Englix. Learn English in the most interesting ways. Forget boring textbooks.
Imagine taking a test in your native language, like the language you've spoken literally since birth.
Right, the one you use every single day.
Yeah, the one you used to navigate your entire life, and then you just fail it.
Oh, it is honestly a devastating experience for people.
And it happens to thousands of highly fluent, like incredibly capable English speakers every single year when they sit down for the IELTS exam.
Yeah, they walk in super confident and they walk out completely crushed.
It's wild. But welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking this really comprehensive preparation roadmap that was developed by Englix.
Right, the YouTube channel.
Exactly. For context, Englix is this wildly popular channel dedicated to helping global English learners. But they specifically target people who are already at, B1 to C1 proficiency level.
Meaning these folks already have a really solid working foundation of the language. They aren't beginners.
Right. And Englix helps them improve through this really engaging mix of stories, vocabulary building, audio exercises, and, daily speaking practice.
They have a very practical, application-based philosophy. So it's not just about memorizing grammar tables. It's about actually using the language as a tool to accomplish real-world goals.
And the ultimate goal for a lot of the learners in their community is achieving a Band 7 or above on the IELTS exam. So our mission today is to really break down the practical tips and strategies from the Englix framework to help you, the listener, hit that magic number.
Which is such a crucial threshold. I mean, a Band 7 is typically the minimum score required for university admissions in English-speaking countries.
Or for securing professional visas, right?
Right, exactly. It's essentially the gatekeeper score.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The English guide starts by addressing what we might call the Band 7 illusion.
Right.
But wait, if someone is already a C1 speaker, meaning they are, highly proficient, shouldn't a Band 7 just be a walk in the park? Why are they failing? Is it actually that elusive for them, or is it just a matter of, test day anxiety?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the barrier isn't linguistic at all. It's completely mechanical.
Oh, how so?
Because these B1 to C1 learners already possess a strong vocabulary, right? And they have a great grasp of grammar. So the mistakes holding them back are strategic errors related to the test format itself.
Oh, interesting.
You really have to think of the IELTS exam less like a casual conversation and more like, a final boss in a video game.
Oh, I like that analogy. So you're saying they have specific attack patterns?
Precisely. When you first face a video game boss, it seems totally unbeatable. I mean, it moves too fast, the attacks are overwhelming, and you just get wiped out in 30 seconds.
Yeah, and your natural reaction is to think, oh man, my character is too weak, I need to go level up.
Right. And in language terms, the student thinks, my English is terrible. I need to learn more vocabulary.
But that's not the issue.
No, because if you pay attention, you realize the boss has very specific, predictable mechanics. It always swings left before it jumps.
So you don't actually need to be a stronger player, you just need to dodge at the exact right moment.
Exactly. And those attack patterns on the IELTS are things like the time constraints on the reading section, or the very specific way the examiners want a prompt answered.
So the student isn't failing because they don't know a word like infrastructure?
No, they are failing because they spent 8 minutes reading a single paragraph and just ran out of time for the rest of the test.
Wow. They didn't understand the mechanics of what is actively being graded.
Exactly. They misunderstood the game.
So if the foundation is already there, it's really just about fine-tuning those mechanics and, dodging the traps.
Exactly.
Let's look at how the Englix framework applies this to the foundational input skills. I'm talking about the reading and listening sections, where you are actively gathering information.
Right. And these receptive skills are where you actually have the most direct control over your score.
Because it's objective, right?
Completely. Unlike the writing or speaking sections, which can feel a bit subjective depending on the examiner, the answers here are facts. They are quite literally printed on the page in front of you or spoken into your headphones.
But here is where it gets really interesting for me. Because the Englix brand is heavily built on using stories and narrative audio for language learning.
Right, they love immersive content.
Yeah. So if you are used to learning by casually listening to engaging podcasts or reading fun stories, do their test strategies rely on that same type of immersive listening? Like, do you just treat the exam passage like a good audiobook?
Oh, not at all. That is actually a massive trap for B1 and C1 learners.
Really? Why?
Well, general language learning is immersive. You want to absorb the flow, the tone, the emotion of the speaker.
Right, you want to get lost in it.
But test taking is surgical.
So being an engaged, relaxed reader works for a novel, but it actively hurts you on a standardized test.
Exactly. Think of it like this. When a detective walks into a room where a crime just happened, they aren't taking in the aesthetic beauty of the wallpaper.
Right, they aren't casually observing the lighting or the furniture arrangement.
Exactly. They are looking for very specific anomalies.
Like the knocked over chair, or the footprint by the window.
Yes. And reading and listening on the IELTS must be treated as a highly strategic exercise in fast information retrieval.
So you are basically a detective scanning for keywords.
Keywords, synonyms, and the specific evidence that corresponds to the questions on your sheet. Nothing else matters.
Let's break down the how of that then. How does a B1 learner actually execute that detective work in the reading section?
Well, it starts with pacing.
Because if you sit down and read a 900-word academic passage about, I don't know, the migratory patterns of the Arctic tern,
Right.
if you read that from left to right, word for word, you are going to hear the buzzer before you even finish the first page.
Which raises an important question about information processing under pressure. So the Englix framework emphasizes the mechanical difference between skimming and scanning.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Skimming is just running your eyes over the text to understand the basic architecture of the passage. You read the first sentence of each paragraph.
Just to get the gist.
Right. You ask yourself, where is the author introducing the topic? Where's the counter-argument? Where is the conclusion?
You are essentially drawing a map of the room. You aren't looking for the clues yet. You just want to know where the furniture is.
Exactly. Then, once you have the map, you look at the questions. And this is where the distractor traps come in.
Distractor traps.
Yes. The IELTS specifically exploits a C1 learner's advanced vocabulary against them.
Wait, how can having a good vocabulary be used against you? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but advanced learners rely heavily on synonyms. So let's say the test question asks, did the population of the Arctic tern decline rapidly in 1995?
Okay.
A C1 learner knows that rapidly means fast or precipitously.
Sure.
Well, the text designers know this too. So in the text, they will include a sentence that says, while the global temperature rose precipitously in 1995, the Arctic tern population remained relatively stable.
Oh, that is so sneaky. The student scans the text, their eyes catch the synonym precipitously, they see the date, 1995, and they immediately mark the answer as true without reading the rest of the sentence.
And they fall right into the trap. The test uses their vocabulary knowledge to bait them.
Wow.
The strategic detective doesn't just look for the synonym, they look at the noun the synonym is attached to. This is why knowing how to read the test is way more important than just knowing how to read English.
Okay, so what about the listening section? Is there a similar, mechanical trap there?
Oh, definitely. The most notorious listening trap is the self-correction.
The self-correction.
Yeah, the exam is designed to overwhelm you with irrelevant information. Because in a real-world conversation, people change their minds constantly, right?
Sure, all the time.
The IELTS audio replicates this perfectly to catch passive listeners off guard.
Give me an example of what that actually sounds like.
So you'll hear a dialogue between, say, a travel agent and a customer.
Yeah.
The agent will say, so I have you booked on the flight departing at 3:45 p.m.
And the passive listener immediately writes down 3.15.
Exactly. But the audio continues. The customer says, actually, the train will be late. Can we make it the 4:30 p.m. flight?
Oh.
And the agent replies, no problem, 4:30 it is.
So if you just grabbed that first piece of data and tuned out, you lost the point. You literally have to wait for the final confirmation.
Which requires really active surgical listening. You are anticipating that correction. You have to let the audio play out instead of just rushing to the answer sheet.
Man, okay. So being a detective works beautifully for finding facts in a text or an audio clip. But you can't just investigate forever.
Right.
Eventually you have to write the police report.
Yeah.
And that is where we shift to the productive skills.
Writing and speaking.
Yeah. And this seems to be where a lot of really high-level learners suddenly freeze and just hit a wall.
Well, receptive skills are all about decoding, but productive skills are about encoding. And doing that under a strict time limit, well, that is where structural flaws in your English really become visible.
The Englix framework promises to unpack the secrets to writing task 1 and task 2.
Oh.
I'm really curious about the mechanics of these writing tasks.
Yeah.
Because from what I understand, are there actual secrets to this, or is it basically just like being a film director, but you've been hired to direct two completely different genres of movies back to back with only an hour to do both.
Honestly, if we connect this to the grading rubric, that analogy is absolutely perfect. The two tasks test completely different modes of communication. Let's break that down.
Okay, so writing task 1 is basically a dry, factual documentary. You are given a visual, like a bar chart, a line graph, maybe a map showing the development of a town over 20 years.
Right.
And your job as the director of this documentary is purely to report the data. It is completely clinical.
Which, surprisingly, is incredibly difficult for highly intelligent, creative people to actually do.
Why is that?
Well, they see a graph showing that ice cream sales plummeted in December, right? And they naturally want to write, sales naturally dropped in December because the winter weather makes people less inclined to eat cold foods.
Which makes total logical sense. I would write that.
It does make sense, but it loses you points. Task 1 doesn't care why the graph went down. The prompt doesn't ask for your analysis of the winter weather. It just asks you to summarize the information presented.
Wow.
Yeah, the moment you introduce outside knowledge or your own opinion, you have fundamentally failed the mechanics of task 1.
So a Band 7 answer just highlights the main trends, the peaks, the valleys, the comparisons, and then gets out.
Exactly. You report the facts and yell, cut.
But then immediately you have to spin around and direct writing task 2. And task 2 is, well, it's a passionate courtroom drama.
Yes, very different.
You are given a controversial prompt. Say, should all public transportation be free? And suddenly you can't just report facts anymore. You have to take a definitive stand.
And this is where B1 and C1 learners often stumble in the exact opposite direction.
They treat task 2 like a documentary.
Exactly. They write a paragraph about the benefits of free transit, and then a paragraph about the downsides. But they never actually present a clear thesis or state their own position until the very last sentence.
So they just list ideas instead of building a case.
Right. To get a Band 7, you are the lawyer in that courtroom. You need to present your thesis right there in the introduction. Public transportation should be heavily subsidized, but not entirely free for the following reasons.
Boom.
Yeah, then you build a logical progression of arguments, you introduce your evidence, and you persuade the examiner that your position is rock solid.
It's basically the ability to successfully code switch between those two genres within 60 minutes.
That's the real test.
Because if you bring courtroom drama to your line graph, you lose points.
Yes.
And if you bring dry, unopinionated reporting to your persuasive essay, you lose points.
Exactly. And that rubric decoding is the real strategy here. It's not about finding some secret vocabulary word. It's about giving the examiner exactly the structural format they are holding on their clipboard.
Got it. Okay, so that leaves us with the speaking section.
The final hurdle.
Yeah. Now, Englix's whole channel philosophy is heavily built around daily speaking practice. But what is actually tripping up advanced speakers on test day? I mean, if I'm already a C1 English speaker, shouldn't I be able to talk to an examiner for 15 minutes without a problem?
You would think so. But advanced learners tend to sabotage themselves by trying to sound way too smart.
Really?
Yeah, they know they need a Band 7, so they try to force these complex, convoluted grammatical structures into their answers just to impress the examiner.
Like they try to use the absolute biggest words they can think of.
Exactly, and in doing so, they completely destroy their fluency.
Oh, man.
Because the speaking test is broken into 3 parts. A simple introduction, a 2-minute monologue where you have to speak on a specific topic, and then a more abstract discussion. So in that 2-minute monologue, let's say the prompt is to describe a childhood vacation. A B1 learner will try to use like the past perfect continuous tense just to sound advanced.
Right.
They'll start saying, we had been traveling for 3 days when suddenly, and then they lose their train of thought. They stumble, they pause for 5 seconds trying to remember the exact right verb conjugation.
And that awkward silence just kills their score.
It absolutely tanks it. The Englix strategy emphasizes that a Band 7 in speaking isn't about having some posh accent or using incredibly rare vocabulary. It is about fluency and coherence.
It's the willingness to speak at length, just seamlessly connecting ideas.
Exactly.
And it's actually better to use simpler grammar perfectly and keep the rhythm flowing than to attempt a super complex sentence and just crash your car halfway through.
Without a doubt. The quickest way to protect a Band 7 score is simply not making silly mistakes under pressure.
Just play it safe.
Yeah, it's maintaining tense coherence. If you are telling a story about the past, just make sure all your verbs stay in the past tense. It's using natural transition words like however, or on the other hand, to bridge your thoughts.
So you don't need to sound like an Oxford professor.
No. You just need to sound natural, relaxed, and structurally clean. That's what they want.
Okay, so we have the defensive strategy of identifying the format traps. We have the surgical detective skills for reading and listening.
Right.
And we have our dual genre director's hat for writing, plus the fluency focus for speaking. We know exactly what to do.
We have the whole toolkit.
But, and this is a big but, knowing the strategies is completely useless if you break down under the pressure of actually doing it.
Which brings us to the unseen engine of the Englix framework.
Right.
The execution.
Right.
They focus really heavily on creating a concrete study plan, establishing daily habits, and implementing a very specific mindset shift.
And this is where I was a bit surprised. I'm looking at a test prep guide for a highly rigorous academic English exam. A lot of traditional test prep ignores mindset completely.
Oh, completely.
They just hand you a stack of practice tests and tell you to get to work. So, can changing your mindset actually measurably raise your score on a standardized test?
It absolutely can. I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, standardized tests like the IELTS are as much an endurance event as they are a test of knowledge.
Right.
You are sitting in a quiet room, your brain is burning glucose at an incredible rate, and you have to maintain intense focus for hours.
So it's like training for a marathon. The study plan and daily habits that Englix outlines, like the consistent daily reading, the daily audio exercises, that is the equivalent of logging physical miles every morning to build up your stamina.
Yes, exactly. Because fast improvement on the IELTS is born from consistency, not cramming.
Right, you can't just run a marathon off the couch.
And you cannot cram for a language test the night before. The neural pathways simply don't form that fast. You have to build the daily habits. But here is the critical vulnerability.
Lisa.
What happens when you practice consistently for a solid month? You sit down to take a timed mock test and your score actually drops.
Oh, you panic.
Yeah.
You assume you're getting worse or that the system is broken,
Yeah.
and you just want to quit right there at mile 20.
And that is exactly where the mindset shift comes in. The Englix framework highlights that this ignored mindset shift is the dividing line between a student perpetually stuck at a band 6 and one who easily breaks through to a band 7.
Because it dictates entirely how they respond to mistakes and setbacks during their daily practice.
Exactly.
So a band 6 mindset looks at a failed practice test and internalizes it. They say, I'm not smart enough, English is too hard, I'll never pass this.
Right. They view the mistake as a final judgment on their inherent ability. They have a fixed mindset.
But a band 7 mindset views a mistake purely as data.
Exactly. When they get a reading question wrong, they don't cry about their intelligence. They look at the answer key and say, oh, okay, I missed that because I didn't spot the synonym trap for the word rapidly.
I was scanning for the wrong noun.
I'll look for that specific mechanic next time.
It's treating the exam less like a judgment of your worth as a human being and way more like a puzzle to be solved.
Yes.
Which brings us right back to the video game boss. You don't have an existential crisis when the boss defeats you. You just note the attack pattern, adjust your timing, and try again.
Precisely. Without that mental resilience, you will abandon your study plan the very first time you hit a plateau and get frustrated.
So the daily habits give you the structure, but the growth mindset is the fuel that allows you to actually stick to those habits when the work gets difficult.
They are inextricably linked. You really can't have one without the other.
Man, so what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's take a quick step back and look at the path we've mapped out today.
It's been a journey.
It really has. We started by dispelling the illusion of the band 7, understanding that for a fluent learner, the difficulty is almost always rooted in the specific mechanical traps of the test format, not a lack of general English.
Right. And then we looked at the surgical nature of the inputs. We established that you cannot treat the reading and listening sections like an immersive story.
You have to be an active detective, using skimming to map the text, scanning to retrieve data, and listening actively to avoid those tricky self-correction traps.
And from there, we built the outputs. We decoded the grading rubrics, learning to switch effortlessly from the clinical, unopinionated reporting of writing task 1 to the persuasive, thesis-driven arguments of task 2.
Right. And we learned that speaking fluency is really about clean, simple delivery rather than tripping over complex grammar just to sound smart.
And finally, we uncovered the engine driving it all, the sheer necessity of daily habits over last-minute cramming, and that critical mindset shift that allows you to weaponize your mistakes into useful data rather than letting them defeat you.
It's so powerful because whether you are actively grinding through IELTS practice tests right now or you are just trying to master a complex new skill in your career, The Englix framework offers an incredibly structured path from confusion to clarity.
It really strips away the anxiety and replaces it with actionable mechanics.
It does. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
We spent the last few minutes talking about that crucial mindset shift and how it is the single biggest factor that most students completely ignore when preparing for a rigorous exam like the IELTS. Everyone is looking for a secret hack, when what they really lack is the mental resilience to keep going after a failure.
Because a strategy is only as strong as the person executing it.
Exactly. So my question to you is this. If a mindset shift is the missing piece for conquering an intimidating exam like the IELTS, what other major hurdles in your own life are you currently trying to solve with pure strategy, when what you really need is a fundamental change in mindset?
Englix. Learn English in the most interesting ways. Forget boring textbooks.